Hi there everyone, back again today to show you how to make a fairy house out of a plastic water bottle and clay. It's an intensive technique, so you need a bit of time set aside to do it properly, but I thought it'd be nice to do something that takes a little bit of time. So I'll just run through the things that you need to make the project. You need your plastic water bottle. This one's a little bit smaller than the one I used for this, but works just as well. You can go for any size, small to very large, but of course you'll need more clay if you use a larger bottle. So this is the clay that I use. It's a air drying clay, very smooth. You might think it's a little bit expensive, but at the same time it works really well. And then you need some tools to work with, just anything that you have handy. You could be matchsticks, a little bit of wire, a spoon, a pencil. I put some braddles here, something you can use to make markings into clay and help you sculpt with the clay. A marker. I put a couple of little sponges here, can be helpful for working with the clay, and the scissors and the craft knife. It's good to have something down on the table too, because when you're working with clay it can get a bit messy. So the first thing that you do is take your water bottle, and you need to then cut out the bottom of the bottle so that it's open like this. And the reason we do that is so that afterwards you can use it as a lamp. You can put up a string of lights, little LED lights, and it lights up the whole thing. It's very nice. So I'm using a pair of scissors. I did make a hole in this a bit earlier on. Yes, there it is. And just cut around the base of the bottle. Yeah, quite simple. You might need to trim a few bits here and there if you want it to stand up fairly well. That seems pretty good. Okay, and then that goes to one side. And then what you're doing is you're using the clay to cover the bottle. But you can see there are certain areas that I've left open for windows, for the window inside the door, little archway window there. Where you place your windows, how you place your door is up to you. I often draw using a marker onto the bottle, just to give me an idea of where I'm going to make the doors and the windows. Just to say, when you open this clay, you can see I've cut it across here. Don't cut right across the wrapping, because this clay starts to harden as soon as it goes into the air. So you want to make sure that if you don't use the whole lot, you're not ending up wasting any. Pick out a little bit of clay. It's very soft and smooth, this clay. I think it's made from a kind of almost like a paper mache, so minced up paper, very, very fine. You may well use the whole of your a small packet like that for this project. So what I do is I get a few pieces and I make them into small, uneven, roughly, I don't know, maybe an inch or an inch and a half across, okay? And then using your finger and thumb, just press it down like that. Don't model it too much. You don't want to dry the clay out, so just press it so that it's flattish. Doesn't have to be really smooth at all, because these projects look better if they're not. And lay the clay onto the bottle. So what you do, you kind of press it down with your finger and thumb towards the edges, and it should stick fairly well. So I'm just going to draw, before I do anything else, can you see there's a little shape here marked on the bottle? I'm actually going to draw around that. That's where I'm going to make my doorway. I might put in a circle here. This is just kind of to remind me. Something like that. Okay. to your clay. You might find that it's difficult to work around the doorways and stuff, but even just a general shape is helpful. So again, sticking this on, I'm going to stick it somewhere near to that so it's going around the shape of the door. When you cross over the two pieces of clay, use the tip of your finger like this just to smooth it over so you're joining the cracks. You can use a tiny bit of water. Don't use too much water with this clay because it can get very sloppy. You don't want to end up in a mess, you know. So there's a bit of a narrower bit there, so I'm just making a smaller piece to fit down there. Once again, you can also use the back of your nail for joining the pieces of clay together. Work on the bottom to begin with, work all the way around the bottom, because then that'll give you a nice steady base. If you start working upwards, it begins to be unbalanced and will start falling over. So it's better to do the base to begin with and get something nice and firm. And you can see now, because it's weighted all the way around, it's made a nice firm base. Well, the beauty of making something like a fairy house is because they're kind of wizened and gnarled looking. These the clay work doesn't have to be perfect at all. In fact, it looks quite good if it's not. If it's a little bit kind of lumpy bumpy, actually kind of suits this project, which is one of the reasons why it's a nice project to do when you're a beginner with clay, because you don't have to make anything look perfect. So I'm putting my hand inside just to give a bit of pressure inside. Just to say, when you're buying a water bottle, if you are buying a water bottle, even if it's an old water bottle, the slightly thicker plastics work better than the very thin ones. When it's made of very thin plastic, the bottle is sometimes just a little bit too soft to hold the weight of the clay properly. So try and look for something that's a strongish one. As you can see, I'm covering the whole of the top. This looks pretty rough, okay? So you want to go back now and start to kind of work with the clay to make the shapes a little bit more attractive. Like you can shape the door into an archway, make the circle and you can try pinching to give a kind of a rim. I'll also show you in a minute how to put a rim on the window. And another option is to use some kind of a tool, maybe actually even the craft knife, to very gently make a little window. Be careful not to push too hard if you're using a knife. So that's another way of getting the shape of the window. Yeah. This would look nice if you make a sort of a window rim. You see how these really stand out? I did that by getting a small piece of clay and rolling it. I'm sure most of you will have done something like this in the past. Put a little bit of water around the outside, and then you can lay on lay on your clay around the doorway, and that just helps you to make the door look more prominent and gives it a little bit more of an attractive finish. Squeeze it a little bit. You don't want the clay to start falling off, so make sure that it's kind of enough of it is pushed onto the clay underneath in order for it to stick well. And do the same around a window. And, just a little bit of water. Now you can see that this is just it's almost roughly done, and I think that's part of the beauty of them. They have a way of looking good, no matter how roughly they're made. They still have a feeling of being a fairy's home. I'm going to make one for that window as well. A little bit of card like this to work on is always handy, especially for rolling, because your clay won't stick to it very much. If you use something more plasticky, sometimes the clay sticks to it. Now, I'm beginning to get some nice shapes there. I might leave that one little triangle one. Now you can see that there's a few little cracks here. Just using your finger, back of your nail maybe, just go over anywhere where you see where the clay isn't joining too well together. Doesn't matter if there's nail marks in it actually, because you're kind of trying to create the feeling of these coming from being made from the bark of a tree. So any kind of little marks like this you use with your nails, they help to hide any of the cracks, but they also give the feeling of wood or bark in a tree. You can also use a tool like this, giving a bit of texture, or even a spoon, anything really that you think is going to make it sort of look slightly gnarly. Certainly getting there now. Now there's a couple of things here. You can see on this one I put a little crossed window there, but I also made this kind of turrety top to it. And people have different ideas about how they like to do the roof. Some people make a little roof to go over the top. That can look really nice as well. The first one, I'm just going to do the square, the cross in the middle, and the window. It's a nice thin little piece. Lay it in. You'll need something just to cut it off. Once again, doesn't have, like you can see, it's different. It's a different width as it goes down, but that's kind of nice. You know, it looks good when it's not too perfect. You have to think about the little creature that's living in here, you know, and that it's fashioned this little house out of twigs and whatever it had available to it. Okay. Now the doorway, as you can see, I've left that open. Some people like to leave it open, but I'm going to close it off to make a half door. So I'll just put another small little bit of clay inside the door, like that. And you can put in then the markings of the wood of the door, and you can also make a small little doorknob. Yep. And then for the top, you might need a bit of clay for doing the top. I'm going to go for doing something quite different to the one I did there. That's a kind of spirally top, which, you know, looks really nice as well. But I'm going to make more of a little roof this time. Like I said, be careful not to overwork the clay. Okay, so I'm just going to work on this and try and make a kind of a round shape for the roof. Don't press too much with it and hold it too much, because it can dry the clay out. Try and smooth some of these little cracks out. Okay, and here's our house, in the front of the house. And I'm going to fit this on over the top here. Just bring it onto the clay, onto the paper here, and you can see it better. Push it down. Try and use your thumb up inside to join the two pieces together. And then you could also use another of these wormy shapes to help it join together. I'm just going to put a little bit of water around the edge there, And I'm going to wrap that around right up inside the roof. Okay, which will give it a little bit more stability. You'll know just by feeling it when it's on securely. Okay, now just a little bit of work around the edge of the roof, make it look a little bit hobbity housey. Maybe try and give it a kind of a fluted edge. You can see that the clay is beginning to dry out a bit here. This room is quite warm, so the clay is beginning to look cracked. Try and put a little bit of water just to help smooth out those cracks. This isn't a clay that you can use lots and lots of water with because of the way that the clay is made, but you can use a little bit. Beginning to get a little bit more roof-like. Maybe smoothen that off, give it a little bit more, and you can use kind of pinching movements. I think these look nice. Give a little bit of definition to what you're doing. Yeah. Getting close now. Let's put a little top on the top knot on the roof. Something like that, like a little pointed bits. Just gives it a little bit more interest. You can play around with this, but you know, like I said, make a decision about what you're going to make and then make it, rather than trying lots of different things, because this clay does dry out in your hands. Now the final part of this is just to put some more texture into the bark. So I'm just using a small little pointed bradawl here, but you could use the matchstick, or I don't know, a chopstick or lollipop stick, anything you have to hand that you can make small kind of pointy shapes with. Be very careful as you hold it now, because you're putting the details and you don't want to squeeze it with your hands too much, so hold it very delicately as you move it around. And again, into the roof, you want all that parts of it to kind of look like they're part of the same thing. You're just marking the surface of the clay. Try not to dig too much, and you don't want to end up breaking the clay completely. Okay. Marking right up into the top of there, so that it looks like it's all been joined together and been carved out of the same trunk of wood. Now you have the fairy house made. So that's the first stage. That needs to be dried now in the air for about 2 days before it's fully dry, and then you can paint it. So I'm going to make the second part of this tutorial in a few days time, and I'll show you how to blend colours and make something look kind of old and wizened. Okay, thank you.